Well, the risk of recession is rising, with experts now warning interest rate rises will crunch the economy.
For more, let's bring in John Keogh, economics editor of the Australian Financial Review. John, good morning. Are we heading for a recession?
Yes, morning guys. Well, we are heading for a sharp downturn in the economy this year. There's no doubt about that. And Commonwealth Bank's top economists, HSBC, they're both putting the odds of a recession at 50%. Ooh. And other economists I've spoken to as well say it's going to be very hard for the Reserve Bank to get inflation down to that 2 to 3% range without causing a recession. Worth noting, look, the definition of recession is pretty technical. 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. In other words, the economy goes backwards for 6 months. But the thing I'm going to be watching for is what happens to the unemployment rate. It's been as low as 3.5%. If it can keep below 5% or so, and we can get inflation under control, that would be a pretty good outcome. But even economists say that's going to be difficult to achieve.
Well, what will the Reserve Bank be looking for? I mean, given that they're preparing to raise rates yet again.
Yeah, the key things they're going to be looking for, Sarah, is what happens obviously to inflation, but also they are a bit worried about what happens with wages. If wages run too hot, feed back into inflation, and you get a bit of wage price persistence or a spiral, that's not going to make their job any easier as well. So I think they're the 2 key variables. The other thing, of course, I'll be watching is house prices. They would like to see that recent gains they've seen just peter out a bit. They've been running away a bit strong, and obviously they'll be keeping a close eye on the unemployment rate, although expecting it to sort of start to rise in the second half of the year.
No comfortable first Tuesdays of the month coming up anytime soon, John. We appreciate your time, though.
Thank you, mate.
Hundreds of millions of dollars will be set aside to ease Queensland's housing crisis, with the government set to announce a plan in the state budget. Let's go live to Andrea Crothers in Brisbane, who has the details for us this morning. Andrea, this is a big relief for families.
Well, Brooke, it's a start. 500 new social housing dwellings to be built by the next 2 years, coming in at a price tag of $322 million. But we know this issue runs far deeper here in Queensland. Latest data showing that Queensland is the worst in the country when it comes to spending on social housing per capita. Just 1,400 new dwellings built in the last 9 years that the Palaszczuk government has been in office. So this latest announcement, that will form part of the state budget to be handed down tomorrow. Brooke.
All right, thanks, Andrea.
Welcome back. Renters across the country may have to wait even longer for action on the housing crisis as the Greens and Labor remain at loggerheads over their policy response. Joining us to discuss is Tasmanian Senator Jackie Lambie in Canberra and Scott Emerson, the commentator in Brisbane. Jackie, you're in the Senate. We'll start with you. The Housing Future Fund is going to be in your chamber during this sitting fortnight. However, things don't look like they're progressing any closer to a deal.
Well, that's pretty disgusting for a Monday morning, isn't it? I mean, we're in the middle of winter, just about. It is freezing out there, and these guys want to argue over a tit for tat when I need people out there that need to have a roof over their head. Like I said, first of all, the foundations will probably take up to 2 years before the first one's even laid. So I suggest that they get on with it. I just cannot believe the Greens aren't passing this. As a guaranteed 1,200 houses for every state and territory out there, and I can assure you that there'll be more on top. You start pushing this stuff, it pushes the states to add more as well and spend some of their own money. That's how it works. We've seen it work in Tasmania. It's worked really, really well. We need to get on with this. This is just, I just really feel right now, if the Greens want to make a statement, go and make one, but don't make it over people's lives when they need a roof over their head when they've got kids. Enough's enough.
Jack, you fought hard for those 1,200 houses for Tasmania, at least. They are focused and targeted towards people that are at risk, towards veterans. Who's really missing out here?
It's everybody missing out except for the Greens who want to bandstand over this and make a name for themselves. And I can tell you now, you might want to go out and talk to constituents down the street, because right now they're bloody angry at you. And I'll be looking very forward while you're holding this up to run this in the next federal election, reminding people what you did that should have had a roof over their heads. That's what we're talking about this morning. This is not tit for tat. People need roofs over their heads. Get on with it.
Scott, we've heard of people in Queensland at the moment. There is new money coming from the Palaszczuk government. We still have, though, people sleeping in cars. You've been part of these negotiations. How does it come to a solution?
Oh, well, look, here's the problem, Charles, is that unfortunately in Queensland, The Productivity Commission shows that this government has failed to deliver over its long term in office. Now, we get the state budget tomorrow. There'll be more money from the Treasurer Cameron Dick for social housing, more money. It is a massive issue here in Queensland. But the problem for the government is they're running out of time. They're heading to an election in October next year. It takes a long time to change this and turn things around. So the state government will pump money into the budget tomorrow. They'll put all the right messages out there. But sadly, in Queensland, we're unlikely to see things change anytime soon.
Yeah, $320 million, or a third of $1 billion, to build 500 social homes by 2025 is part of that budget. Anything else you're expecting, Scott, or anything else you'd like to see?
Oh, well, the irony, of course, with this budget is the massive surplus that Cameron Dick will bring down tomorrow all comes from mining royalties, an area that Labor has attacked, particularly in areas of coal. But in fact, the surplus they're delivering comes back to a royalties regime and the money they'll be getting from that sector, which is often demonised by Labor.
All right, we'll move on. More than 1,000 Australians have been recognised in this year's King's Birthday Honours, including Tim Winton, Barry Humphries, who've both been appointed to the Order of Australian. Jackie, you can't help but wonder how much relevance these honours still have these days.
I have to say, look, there are people out there that really deserve honours, and there are some that we give to that probably don't deserve them. And I think they've been, for me, ever since I've been watching this very closely over the last 10 years, I just think that sometimes this has come really unstuck with people that we've awarded honours to, and I think for me it feels like it's just watered the system down a little bit. Doesn't seem to be as privileged of having those 3 letters after your name or a couple of letters after your name. It's worrying. But those people that are out there helping in the community, that is not part of their full-time job, they're the ones that should be rewarded that. Any first responders that have to show up at traffic accidents and put in harm's way all the time and things like that. But I tell you what makes me feel sick to the gut is when politicians are paid as much as what they do, and you can see them, especially getting Order of Australia medals for, on Australia Day and stuff like that. And I think, mate, you're getting paid enough. What's the... Yeah, so for me, I just really worry about these medals. I think we need to be a little bit more hardcore of them. They should be out for community, not for doing the job that you're paid to do.
You bang on about the first responders, and we're seeing the value of them in the saddest of circumstances this morning. Tim Winton says he's pleased to accept the honour, but he thinks the King has never heard of him. Scott?
Well, that probably is the case. I don't know. He might be a massive fan of Tim Winton, and he's got all these books there, Cloud Street, others there on the shelf there, Charles. But I suspect Tim's right on that one. But look, these awards, there are so many people that are deserving of these awards that get them, and that's great. But we all know in our community, you mentioned the first responders, those who seem to do so much in their local community without the glory, without the fame, and don't get a recognition that they deserve.
Scott, just quickly on that crash in the Hunter Valley, I mean, this is something in an area that you've worked in. Take us through what would be going on and what the feeling is like for all those involved.
Well, like I was the Transport Minister and responsible for road safety in Queensland, this is horrific, and this is going to have echoes going from many years. Obviously today, we're obviously trying to work out what's happened, deal with the injured, deal with the families, but also those first responders. They are trained to deal with this, but the kind of horrific nature of what's happened here, this is going to echo for a long time. And of course, we're going to have to investigate why this occurred, why we saw this single vehicle accident there, what was happening on the bus at the time, were seatbelts installed, were they used? There's a lot to be investigated in this, but today particularly it's dealing with the injured, dealing with the families. But let's not forget those first responders. They've turned up, they're trained for this, but this is a very, very difficult day for them.
Yeah, the victims stretch far beyond those that were on the bus. Scott, we appreciate your time. Jackie, thank you as always. Sarah.
Thank you.